This video is going to be a film study preview of the Ravens' trip to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers in their AFC North showdown Sunday afternoon. I'm going to focus this video on some of the things that other NFL teams have done or attempted to do against the Steelers defense. In many cases in this video, it's going to be out of 11 personnel. This is not a comprehensive preview or suggestion in totality of what I think the Ravens offensive staff, Todd Monken, should do or should have done in terms of their work and preparation and their call sheet. These are some of the things that multiple NFL teams have been able to execute against the Steelers defense, number one. Number two, I will attempt to explain three elements of the Steelers defense that span across multiple seasons. So what I mean is no matter who is on the field, no matter what jersey number is on the field, these are just things that the Steelers do as a part of their system, and that whereby they're willing to cede yards or cede opportunities to certain players. And I think some of the responses to option concepts that they have always used against the Ravens may have to change simply because of the dynamic of Derrick Henry. And then finally, some of the situations pass coverage wise that that may allow you as a fan to anticipate what the Steelers are going to play before a particular snap, depending on the down and distance and depending on the personnel group that we have on the field. Let's get started first with the film in terms of talking about what the Steelers are, what they do that might be different from what other teams do. Against the Herbig, who's very talented as well, Preston Smith, who they just acquired, they're going to run those guys directly at the quarterback, essentially force a give read. That was a smart decision against the Ravens and Lamar Jackson for years, even though we had talented running backs like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. By the way, I don't know why Patrick Queen is involved in this stuff. Pretty much every game, once a game, you'll see situations after the play where someone else locks him up or he locks someone else up for whatever reason. That's certainly not what I'm saying at all. This is just their decision. And many teams are putting the running back on the side of the tight end, or in this case, two tight ends, and then running option concepts from there. Teams could have their outside linebacker or edge defender run down the line of scrimmage to tackle the running back. Of course, that will be a keep read for the quarterback, and you'll see an example of that a little bit later here. Additional to that, they could kind of keep the outside linebacker shoulder square, slow play it, if you will. Some people call it half man. Whatever phrase or terminology you're familiar with, the point would be you're muddying or graying up the read for the quarterback such that he has to make a decision based on what he wants to do, give it or keep it. But defensively, that half-man read, which is something the Patriots did a ton of in their Super Bowl era, you're not making it clear for the quarterback with your play calling and what you're trying to get done. And I think this was I think their strategy against the option worked well against the Ravens for certain stretches because it gets the ball out of Lamar's hands. That dynamic is absolutely different now with Derrick Henry in the backfield. I welcome this strategy by them because I think it just gives Derrick Henry more carries. There will be certain 3rd and 2 situations where we normally would keep it with Lamar and maybe run around the edge to get a first down. The Steelers want to avoid that. They want to force someone else to execute it, and now we have a guy who can. But in their mind, I think they're just trying to make it as simple as possible so their other guys can play direct and fast flow. All right, something else that they have always done a great job of there, or at least that you would see across seasons, is get the strong safety involved in the run game, particularly to the tight end side, hence the name strong safety. In this case, it happens to be Deshaun Elliott. You're going to see him lined up in the box often. Another element to their defense that I have always enjoyed is kind of this canted nose tackle. So what I'm talking about is this right here. You do see it across multiple levels of football, but it's increasingly rare over the years. They feel like it allows him to condense or compress the center if there is no down block or combo by the right tackle. Some people I know say, well, I don't like this because we feel like we're giving up a huge surface or contact area. It allows an inside linebacker, theoretically, let me preface this, to be A-gap responsible on this side, Queen, but also be able to theoretically climb over the top and play another gap to the other side of the field if that's where the football goes. Now, he actually does get comboed here, he being Queen. I got it slowed down some, but you can see what a couple of things happening. They are comboing him. Queen, I think, is stepping to his gap. Fine. It's a canted nose tackle who ends up in Queen's gap, so Queen gets comboed by the right guard. But you can see what's happening here with the strong safety, reading the tight end, stepping out to T.J. Watt, inserting Malik Neighbors into the C gap to go get Deshaun Elliott. He's heavily involved in the run game, especially when he's lined up that close. I think Deshaun Elliott can impact the game when he's lined up here and when he's playing downhill. Anytime his feet are back here and he's got to play from depth a little bit more and make decisions about run pass, to me, his effectiveness, his potential impact on the play is reduced by 20 to 30%. He's a much more effective, decisive player when he's playing within 4 to 6 yards of the line of scrimmage. Another thing that the Steelers have done consistently over the years is have safeties and or DBs read and react to motion. In this case, it's post-snap movement by the Elliott does necessarily. I mean, he makes the play, but this read, and it's multiple teams and defenses that use it, but they're just committed to it. If you motion across, oftentimes that backside safety is going to blitz and insert into the run fit and the pass protection scheme. This case, it happens post-snap, but I felt like this play was a really good example of what I'm talking about. He shouldn't be there. He's not responsible for that gap. Washington, maybe just having not played the Steelers a ton, perhaps wasn't aware of it. Another thing to notice is when the ball is on the hash and you're in 11 personnel, Deshaun Elliott is going to be the boundary side safety, and then you're normally going to get Peyton Wilson being the boundary side inside linebacker and Queen to the field. So they've switched these guys. My suspicion is they've switched them because Wilson is to the side of the running back. The nickel defender is number 31. In 11 personnel, he'll be lined up to the field. Those are just some of the things that over the years have been systemic to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, no matter who the defensive coordinator is, no matter, and when I say systemic, I mean the past 4 or 5 years. Motion triggers a blitz from the backside. Outside linebacker, edge defender, running at the quarterback's outside shoulder, making contact with the quarterback in many cases, T.J. Watt and Lamar, to force a give read to the running back. That canted nose tackle trying to protect, and that's out of their base defense, not their nickel personnel. That canted nose tackle to the strong side, trying to protect the backside inside linebacker, allowing him to fold or flow over the midline and get involved on a play in the opposite direction. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Those are just things that the Steelers do, and you can perhaps look for pre-snap if you want to perhaps enjoy that side of the ball a little bit more. Now let's focus on some things that multiple NFL teams are doing. I solely focused my film study on the Colts game, Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders. So 3 of the NFC East teams, and then a Colts team that had to utilize Joe Flacco to finish off the Steelers. In fact, they were up 17-0 in that game and 17-3 at the half. Fortunately, we're able to get Justin Fields' fumble on a poor snap, on a poor awareness prior to a snap to hold on and win 27-24 at home. I look for us to vacillate between personnel groups, but 12 personnel, 21, 22, we've got a lot of options, including 12, that I think could be a huge factor if Isaiah Likely is completely healthy. But one thing that many NFL teams are doing against this defense is they're going 11 personnel, A-gun. So the running back on the same side as the tight end. And why are they doing that? Well, it's kind of established or pre-established the rationale. On an option phase, these outside linebackers are assigned to quarterback. Force a give read. Well, they've widened them up. We'll focus this on the Steelers' defense, so to the exclusion of their offense to a certain extent. This team doesn't get penalized. That's all I'll say about that. So the running back is going to flip sides after the motion. And you end up with the outside linebacker really wide, ball on the left hash. Again, Deshaun Elliott into the boundary. That's the guy that you're going to have to deal with if you're going to run 11 personnel A-gun option into the boundary, with Derrick Henry being our running back, I like our chances. But you're getting the tight end stepping out to Highsmith. Jones appears to be reading it to me on this particular case. Doubling of the 3 technique, working backside to the inside linebacker and the nose tackle. And you can see the huge spot that opens up to the front, to the feet, and then go play action and throw in behind Deshaun Elliott when he's down in the box here. So put the ball in Derrick Henry's gut and then kick back Lamar and run something that's over the middle that removes him from being able to react and or a stutter go, something that looks like a sluggo, something that looks like a slant to Joey Porter and or the Steelers try to do to make an answer or account for it. So you'll see there's Patrick Queen here and no corresponding inside linebacker next to him. Why? Well, because the Steelers' answer for anything option related is just to run the edge defender at the outside shoulder or whatever their aiming point is of the quarterback. So all they've done is take the actual outside linebacker, put him head up on the tight end, and then stem him down inside. And take the inside linebacker, Peyton Wilson, and do the same damn thing with him that they do with the outside linebacker anyway. My point is, their answers, in my opinion, if we were to say what's his relative weakness, it's not in pass coverage. His relative weakness would be standing up at the point of attack into the boundary where, again, I think multiple NFL teams have decided to attack the Steelers' defense. So let's get to the touchdown run. It's again out of A-gun. Tight end on the same side as the running back. Steelers are in a mug look. It's only second down. In fact, I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Ravens decided to let him leave. But he's got some depth here. Certainly not as much depth as Minkah Fitzpatrick, who plays a little bit more of the free safety role. Essentially the same concept. These guys have gotten themselves out of position with Wilson and Queen being mugged up. There's some things to be said about that, about how often we mug our inside linebackers up. But look at the seam or the crease that's created. It's pretty obvious where this ball is going to go. It's a 45-yard touchdown, not 46. Commanders did the same thing last week. His alignment up, I should say. Basically, some people call it screwed down. Head up, almost to inside shade of the tight end. And Queen does a great job of stepping but staying square here. And then on the keep by Daniels, he flows over the top. I would say that it might be in our best interest sometimes to go ahead and go get the inside linebacker here. So we would normally do the same thing that the Commanders do. We would normally arc release the tight end up to the boundary side defensive back and really isolate that outside line. If they're going to take the outside linebacker and walk him down, they're telling us pre-snap what they're going to do. If we were to have to run option over to this side, I suspect that because of that wide alignment, TJ Watt would run at the quarterback to the outside shoulder to force a give read. Look at the differential in alignment. It's a solid alignment because there is a tight end there, number one. Number two, the Steelers have been, I think, forced out of their typical response to option, which is to run at the quarterback. If we get this type of alignment by outside linebacker pre-snap, I almost wonder if we shouldn't loop and release to the inside linebacker, cut off that outside pursuit, still let it be a read by Lamar. But what happens is if we keep it, now the inside linebacker is not pursuing inside out, and Deshaun Elliott would be put on iced sound things that I have seen them do historically. When they go cowboy here, they've really isolated the strong safety to the boundary. It's Deshaun Elliott. Like I said, the nickel defender is also to the field. So if we were to get a cowboy call, whatever the Ravens call it, and the outside linebacker screws down or gets statically going to loop to the front side inside linebacker, and we would leave the boundary side safety or whoever the boundary side defensive back is, whether it's corner or whatever, one-on-one with Lamar if we get a keep read. It's been a consistent theme. This is Washington's late second quarter drive. Out of 11 personnel, 12, 22, 21. Check out what's happening here. This is, like I said, a little bit later than the play that I showed you a moment ago. So now you have tight end and running back same side. and you don't have a cowboy call, the corner and the safety are both still on the left side of the defense, right side of the offense. Why? Because the Steelers, are worried about that option give and then winding it back. So TJ Watt has stepped down to take the tight end. So you see a little bit of an adaptation or alteration after things kind of get stacked up early on. So instead of running at the quarterback, you can see the difference here. They're kind of trying to maul or get hands on the tight end. Tight end, Likely or Kolar. Likely situation a little bit different this week, perhaps because he's been dealing with injury. But in my opinion, we can't be so predictable depending on who the tight end is that's on the field. So there is definitely a run-pass tendency when Kolar is that tight end in 11 personnel versus Andrews and or Likely. A couple of more plays out of A-Gun. This one is also trips closed. Really big hit by Deshaun Elliott here into the boundary. The Steelers have retained their corner to the backside. They didn't go cowboy, so Joey Porter Jr. is not over here to the trip side. He's lined up on the right side with Jackson on the left. They seem to switch sides certain weeks. It's very interesting. Everybody else is blocked up here for the Steelers. Deshaun Elliott is a free hitter, able to get involved in a tackle on Eckler. I like our chances, even if he's a free hitter, as long as he's not within 5 yards at the time of contact with Derrick Henry. If he's playing downhill, so this right here, I mean, there's a huge size disparity. It's a great play by Deshaun Elliott. If he's within 3 yards, 4 yards, maybe 5 at the time that he contacts, at the time that he recognizes run, so basically closer to the line of scrimmage, then I think he could come downhill and make tackles. The more space he is, the further off the line of scrimmage he is, the more difficulty he's going to have, in my opinion, making those tackles against a guy like Derrick Henry. Some play action opportunities do exist out of A-Gun. So outside linebacker and 11 personnel up to the tight end. They've been gashed so much that through the course of the season on this concept that now they're willing to adjust or adapt a little bit. So the outside linebacker away is widened up. The outside linebacker to the tight end side is screwed down, head up on the tight end. You can see there's a mesh, and they've got a lot of reaction from Deshaun Elliott from the outside linebacker. And this is a guy that I think Zay Flowers is going to be used. 3 interceptions. But I think Zay Flowers and or Nelson Aguilar is going to be able to get things done against him in terms of getting open and making themselves available for Lamar, particularly on play-action concepts. Let's switch gears somewhat and talk about some coverage patterns or tendencies that have been inherent to the Steelers' defense for years. I'm talking at least the last 4 or 5 years, but in particular the last 2 or 3 where I've been trying to break down NFL film and present it to people, even in preview form, so that you can perhaps enjoy the game a little bit more. They play a ton of insert cover 3, where the safety drops down on a hash, pushing an inside linebacker out into the flats. And I've always appreciated it and respected it. They're one of the teams I think that utilize that concept the most. It protects an inside linebacker in some cases by having them push out into the flats, generally to the boundary, and cover a smaller swath or smaller area of the field. If you recall, Robert Spillane's interception in 2020 in Baltimore against the Ravens, I believe it was 2020, that was essentially what the coverage was. The inside linebackers are able to switch their coverage area, and the quarterback doesn't necessarily know it. Now, we've seen it so often that it doesn't bother Lamar Jackson at this point. So let's get to a film. This is actually of a play from last year, but I think it does a nice job of illustrating what I'm talking about. The ball's in the middle of the field, but because it's 11 personnel, the nickel is to the downside of the screen. So here's the nickel defender. And watch what happens with these 2 inside linebackers as Fitzpatrick inserts down to the hash, essentially taking over, one of the inside linebackers' pass drops. He fakes like he's going to drop back to a Tampa 2 or some type of cover 2. And then because he's inserted on the hash, this is 2nd and 12, The nickel defender stayed into the flat. So curl, flat area, but he's an inside linebacker who moved from the hash to do so. So it's just a safe way of playing cover two, pushing him to the flats, pushing this inside linebacker to the hash, inserting the safety onto the hash here, and then pushing that nickel defender into the flats to play a traditional cover three. Very simple, safe, similar to a lot of the things that we did under Mike McDonald. The one thing I will say about it, if we can pick up on the instances where they try to accomplish this, oftentimes that backside safety is getting to the trip side a little late for my taste. So what I mean is you got three receivers here, one receiver to the backside. You want your free safety in a cover three to be able to help out with trips because of the threat or the possibility of two verticals. Now, they may try to match one of them, but if we're in 11 personnel, theoretically two of those guys, maybe three, should be a wide receiver. It's my opinion, based on the film that I have watched, that they will not do this with the backside safety trying to roll over if we already had three receivers here. There seems to be some type of tendency and I don't get to watch, obviously, nearly as much film as I would like to, or Ravens coaches are tasked to do. I generally feel like I see this coverage when a tight end is one of these two players here. My assumption or my thought would be that they're not as worried about multiple vertical routes and this player, this free safety, having to try to roll over the top and get to help out with one of them. So there does seem to be not just down and distance situations, but I think they're exceptional at formation recognition and running different coverages depending on where some of your biggest threats line up. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. A couple of instances of their cover two and when and where they play it the most. Something interesting here is that Queen and Peyton Wilson are switching sides when the tight end flips. Normally they want Peyton Wilson to the boundary. You can see the ball is in the middle of the field, so that might change some of the way that they call this. But Deshaun Elliott lining up near the line of scrimmage, and obviously incredibly prepared. So when I say dual or mirrored routes, this receiver to the downside and Slayton to the top side are running the same route. Outside release, corners are trying to jam or get a piece, not really rerouting much at all down here. Jackson also misses up to the top side, and so that creates a little bit more of an obvious read or throw in this void. Daniel Jones unable to hold that ball down on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. How can you tell? Well, they do a good job of disguising it. Deshaun Elliott is the boundary side safety like I described. So you see him lined up close down here. And then he's going to get in his pedal and work back to a deep halves alignment. Additional to that, they've inverted Queen and the nickel defender, very similar to what we do with Kyle Hamilton. The nickel defender theoretically could cover a vertical. Queen is a hash defender. Peyton Wilson as a hash defender. Two corners in the flats. I do think going for picks and selling out for interceptions because I think he's a very sound and smart player, and they wouldn't have him on the field. They wouldn't play some of these coverages if he didn't play them well. But there's been times in that cover two whereby he ends up a little bit off balance, and Jackson, when they're trying to get their initial punch, their reroute on the number one receiver. Finally, let's get into some of the coverage situations where they're playing man and maybe some of the players or route concepts that the Ravens can use to attack them. I think the Ravens need to attack downfield. I don't mean 30, 40 yards deep, but I mean intermediate to deeper throws against some of their outside corners and their nickel defenders. Let's get to a little bit of the film again. We're going to focus on the Giants and Commanders film to the exclusion of Cowboys and Colts. In my opinion, when they're telling us that they're going to bring pressure and they're playing man, we should try to attack down the field. It's not to say that their corners aren't good. They are. I do think there's yards there, and you'll be able to see it in the film. You really don't need me to tell you. You can even look at routes on the other side that are going to be open as well. Some really weird coverage. Blocking situations occur on this play. Outside linebackers, the edge defenders, primarily, and not allow yourself to be possibly overexerted or overly focused on something else. A side point to that, and I talked about this in a video I put out Thursday, anything that Queen gets where a guard pulls, he's going to react to. So, and that's fine. That's a primary key for an inside linebacker. So if we want to open up windows possibly for RPO stuff, I could understand that. Our RPOs have not been tremendously effective recently, if you ask me, but you can get an idea of what I was talking about a moment ago. The left tackle, because he got help, thought he had a moment to look to the inside or chip situations and try to develop something down the field. I think that's a second down, by the way. It's not like these are all third down situations. Against trips, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier on. Ball's in the middle of the field. They love to insert a safety down, robber, if you want to call it, fine. In this case, Wilson is assigned to the tight end, nickel defender on the slot, and then Porter on the outside receiver. This one's a third down and ends up being completion against Jackson up top. I don't mean to present this play and the previous one against Jackson to indicate that I think that it's a third down, and you can kind of see Fitzpatrick dropping down. The ball's not on the hash. If the ball was on the hash, I would say, okay, we might have an indicator here of how Lamar could predict some of the coverages because of alignment. Recall or remember that Deshaun Elliott is oftentimes the closest to the short side of the field, but I would still consider that middle alignment. So here's another one. Ball on the right hash. Deshaun Elliott and Fitzpatrick are going to flip sides. Kind of a pre-snap indicator for us and for Lamar that you're going to get man. Pre-snap, tight end is over here. There's Elliott, nickel defender on the slot. Obviously, the outside two corners are matched up. This is 2nd and 5. It's going to be an incomplete pass up top to Malik Neighbors. Point is about alignment, and the safeties kind of gives away some of the coverages if the ball's on a hash and we flip sides with the tight end. I'm kind of looking forward to them bringing pressure. I know that that's going to be an unpopular opinion. I'm actually looking forward to more players for the Steelers moving in this direction towards the quarterback. And I'm talking about 5 or even 6-man rushes like you see here, so that if and when we catch the football, there's more space in this area to make people miss and pick up yards after the catch. They're very smart and intelligent about when and where they bring pressure, if you ask me. Version. I think we've got to avoid, this one might be one that we need to avoid as much as possible. So, ball on the left hash. Fitzpatrick is actually to the boundary with a nickel to the field. And the running back is into the boundary as well. So we're really going to be putting the right tackle on an island with Watt here. This is one I think we've got to avoid as much as possible. He doesn't get the sack here. It's complete to Neighbors against Porter. He gets the first down. The ball's a little bit late, in my opinion, from Jones. And you can see Neighbors like with his hand up, kind of like, hey, man, the ball should be almost here by now, and we've still got a hold of it. It was like a China out by Neighbors. He didn't go in that far, but he took his route to the inside. Anything change of direction with like a Zay Flowers type guy, at least have a running back and or tight end on Watt's side with the threat of chipping him or helping out. Elliott lined up to the boundary, head up on the tight end. These are just indicators for you, but small things, part of the equation that Lamar would look at to say, okay, I know what coverage we've got here, and so therefore I know where I may go with the football. Really poor job, if you ask me, of the Commanders' offensive line. But let's focus on, there do seem to be a lot of these routes run against the Steelers, whereby receivers are moving in and then coming back out. I call them China in or China out. Some people call them whip routes, whatever. There's more of these routes run against the Steelers than any other defense I have seen. So they're the Commanders' inability to deal with the edge defender and the inside linebackers that are mugged up, both of which are dropping out. Queen dropping out. Wilson is pushing horizontal because he's going with the running back. I think it's Eckler right there. I do want to talk about some other personnel groupings. We've focused almost exclusively on 11 personnel. And by doing so, what I'm saying is these are the things we may run if we're into a lot of 2nd and 7s. If we want to run the football in that situation, which may be rare, number one. But number two, if we're forced to be in 11 personnel because they've stopped our first down run play. And I do think that we should be looking at going play action on first down. Throwing the football, attacking them. This is an example. It's 12 personnel. 1st and 10. And not only does Porter give up a big completion to Noah Brown up the right side on a comeback route, but you've got a pretty obvious pass interference up to the top side. That's one thing I'll say about Jackson is there are some reps where when he interferes, it's obvious. It's not like Porter where there's 3 or 4 or 5 plays every game that are somewhat debatable if you wanted to take the stance that you think he grabs and holds a lot. I actually really like the way he plays football. I thought he slid in the draft too far in my opinion, but you get a nice view of the setup here. It's 12 personnel, and they've got their base defense on the field with the strong safety, in this case Deshaun Elliott, walked up. Another example of it, except this time they're playing press bail into a cover 3. I understand why they call the flag on Porter against Noah Brown, because as they're working down the field, Porter takes his right arm and kind of hooks right here. So he's, that part is obvious, but from the all-22, it doesn't look obvious really. Let me move the screen a little bit. My apologies. We'll let it flow a few times. The first time I saw this, I thought, man, I hate that call. Because I like when DBs run the route for the receiver. Essentially, you know the route that's coming, so you run the route for him, beat him to the spot. And I do think Porter has done that here initially. But these are the kind of things that I think have to be frustrating for their coaching staff and perhaps even for their players, for their fans. An 8-man box or a blitz pressure, and then we can try to punish them on first down with the pass game. I think that needs to be an integral part, a big part of the strategy for this game is get some chunk plays on first down against the Steelers defense. We're a chunk play offense. I think there's been games where our third down conversions have not been great in terms of our overall percentage, but when we have converted, we've been able to get big plays, or we just haven't faced many third downs. We're going to face third downs in this game. And the Steelers are either going to line up and bring pressure, try to get the ball out of Lamar's hands, one of the things they've done successfully over the years in the 4 games that he's played against them, that is, or they're going to at times play zone. I know that Lamar and Todd Monken are on to some of these pre-snap indicators in terms of the coverage, meaning they can look at a particular player's alignment against a particular formation and know what the coverage is based on where that player is standing pre-snap before the ball snapped. How many of those situations we get in, those known passing situations, will be a huge factor here. Just like the Bengals and the Browns, the Steelers are going to come in wanting to stop or slow down Derrick Henry. I think we're going to catch them. We have the opportunity to catch them over-committing, somewhat similar to what we did against the Bengals at times in our first matchup. If you look at our 3 division games, those to me are the teams that have come in with the best plan, the most obvious intentional plan to try to stop or slow down Derrick Henry. I'm not saying that they were all able to do so, but I think that's because they know John Harbaugh. This is the second year of Todd Monken's offense, so they have some exposure to what he calls as well. I look for some first down play action opportunities out of obvious run situations. I do think 22 personnel and 21 personnel is going to be a big deal in this game. Getting the Steelers' base defense on the field and then manipulating them into and out of run-stopping looks by formation. Todd Monken retains or has the ability to do that, first of all, because of his system, because of the offensive design, but also because of the unique personnel that we have. Pat Ricard, as a fullback, can play tight end. 2 of our tight ends, Likely and Andrews, can play wide receiver or slot wide receiver, if you will, into the boundary. So even though we go 21 or 22 personnel, we retain the ability to still be a, quote, spread team in those situations. It all is up to Monken and the offensive staff, what they saw on film, what they want to attack. Most of this video focused on 11 personnel and some of the things that the Steelers just do systemically over the years that I've noticed. There's certainly more things that they try to get done or try to accomplish that I'm able to point out or recognize to you. If you appreciated this video or you enjoyed it, first of all, please let me know in the comment section. Second of all, if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy some of the play concepts that I showed, even though I didn't show any Ravens film, I'm trying to give you a primer on the Steelers defense with some of the personnel traits that they have out on the field, just so you feel a little bit more prepared during the game, watching things pre-snap. This is what helps me kind of guide my content after the game, the reaction videos I put out on Sunday night, number one. Number two, it also kind of guides my content next week after the game, whether we win or lose, because I have an idea of maybe how we were trying to attack certain spots, certain coverages, or certain players on their defense. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study preview of a hugely important AFC North battle between the Ravens and the Steelers, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.